Okay. All right, cool. Well, I am going to start because it is after 7. And then if people join us, then that's fine. So has everybody got everybody on the screen? Can you see Suzy and can you see me as well? Can everybody see Suzy? Just put your thumbs up if you can. Okay, cool. If you need to rearrange your screen so you can see her, then rearrange. Okay, cool. Right, so thank you everybody for coming along to listen, and thank you Suzy for agreeing to do the talk for us all tonight. It is a super interesting subject. I'm really keen to hear what you've got to say tonight, so I've got my pad and pen to make notes as well. So it's going to be a slightly different format to what we normally do. So I'm pretty much going to hand over to Suzy for the first part, and she's going to deliver a mini presentation for us on the subject of burnout, and specifically from a nutritional perspective. So we've all read about overtraining and burnout from a runner's perspective and from a training perspective, but not necessarily from nutrition side. So it should be really interesting. And then after Suzy's done the presentation, then we'll open it up and you can ask her any questions. So make use of the time with Suzy. I know you're all super keen, so I'm sure you'll have questions. Is that okay with you, Suzy? Does that sound
lovely? I love questions, yes.
Yeah.
Except the ones I can't answer, of course. But I will say I can't if I can't.
So do you want to just give us, because we don't really know each other that well, we just met each other on a course at the start of this month. And I was super interested in what Suzy was doing. So I was keen to would you mind come on and do a talk for us? And she obviously kind of said yes. So we don't really know each other that well. So it'd be nice to if you could just tell us a little bit about what you do and how long you've been doing that for. And then I'll just hand over to you and you can go for your presentation, Suzy.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. Well, it was really surprising to find that Rachel was only, half an hour away? Even because when you're on a Zoom presentation, you've absolutely no idea where anybody is. And so it was lovely to discover that Rachel was in Yorkshire. I've been working with nutrition for the last 22 years, so I trained between 22 to 20 years ago. And one of the reasons I did that is because I was already trained in reflexology and I wanted something that people could take away and use themselves, because any therapy is quite a short-term effect, really. Some people get really long-lasting results from just a small input, and others it's much more temporary, depending usually on how much pathology or unwellness there is in the body, really. And so to be able to give people information that they could use themselves, and it's not the easiest thing. And what is lovely to speak to a running group is that you already have, you're already making quite a commitment to yourself, to your health, with the habit of running. And really, nutrition requires that level of commitment to yourself. And so it's unusual for me to speak to people who already have really good habits, if you like, and rather delightful. And so I've taught over the years for a private college and York College. I've taught nutrition at, and that is teaching practitioners. And so if I do waffle on and go into too much detail, please, I do apologise now. I will do my best not to do that.
We're super interested, Suzy, so I'm sure everything you say will be of interest.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm going to grab this little presentation and we can take it from there. Oh, it says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, no, not a technical issue. I'm not technical at all, Suzy. Oh no, what do I have to do?
You know where you can get that menu, that drop-down menu? There's probably something in there that...
There's one participant can share at a time. If I unclick that, maybe...
that sounds good. Yeah, and then I'll try again.
Multiple participants thing. try that. Can you share now?
Oh, yeah, we're away. Fantastic.
My word, I resolved a technical issue.
Here we go. There. Okay, so the idea that we wanted to look at when we talked about it, first of all, Rachel and I, is the fact that everybody really is under extra stress than usual, and what happens to the body when it is stressed, because the physiological processes that take place will have an impact on our ability to do everything else in our life, even take exercise, because of what happens. So I'll go into that. And one of the things I always like to start with is encouraging people to look at themselves from a cellular level, because we're a bit like a house in that we have little bricks that make us up. Of course, I do appreciate that some people don't live in brick-built houses, but I do. So all of your organs and your tissues in your body are made up of these bricks. And if we keep each of those tiny, simple cells healthy, then as a whole house, if you like, a body, we will also be healthy. And so it's looking at what do those cells need to survive. And really the needs are very, very simple. So just reflecting on what happens when your body is actually stressed. And what happens is that it's no longer in a growth mode. Your body's cells are not replacing as easily. They're not regenerating. They're not repairing. When your body's stressed, it literally goes into defense mode. And that means that, first of all, your ability to cleanse your cells goes down. And each and every day, ideally, the body excretes 4 pints of water from the kidneys, the lungs, and the skin in the form of urine and breath and sweat. And so, of course, we can't see our breath on a warm day like this. We can only see it, in midwinter, when we're like a load of little dragons puffing along the street. And so there is that water loss there as well. And if you can think about your other bodily functions, your immunity also goes down when you're in defense mode. And so the current situation, crazily, although it's supposed to be protecting everybody, with the media sort of message and the government message, my feeling is it's actually put a lot more people in a more stressful mind place. And so in that instance, your immunity subsides when you are stressed. Your blood pressure goes up, your cholesterol goes up, your heart rate also goes up. And unfortunately, the blood supply to the frontal cortex of the brain and your digestive system goes down. And you also start to lose water. That's a result of the extra adrenal stress, and you also start to misplace it. So some people can find that when they're stressed, they actually start to swell, and that might be bloating abdomen by the end of the day, or it may even actually be swollen ankles and wrists and so on. They might wake up and find that their rings are, difficult to get off because their fingers have swollen up. And so one thing I'd just like to mention is cholesterol, because we are told so much about cholesterol, that it's a bad thing. And in actual fact, I'd like to be the devil's advocate there and just mention some research that was done with tax consultants over several months. And so they measured the blood pressure and cholesterol levels of tax consultants during the year, and they monitored it right through several months. And then the tax year end came, And the tax consultants, having had steady blood pressure and steady cholesterol levels, their cholesterol levels and blood pressure went whoosh like this. And the conclusion that was drawn was that the effect of stress is to raise cholesterol. So we're often told that it's dietary, but in actual fact, when your body is stressed, it will produce more cholesterol. And I will mention that again. So what we really need is for our cells to be in a state of growth and repair. And that really entails us being in a non-stressed state. And there is some internal work that we can do to contribute to that. And so when we are in a state of growth and repair, your cells can reproduce, they can restore themselves, they can repair themselves. And following on from that, we're in a place where we can innovate and create. We're in a really healthy mental place. So adrenaline response to stress is a really ancient stress response. You know, along with the dinosaurs, you either ran or you fought. And so, and I'm not really thinking about dinosaurs, I'm thinking more about woolly-toothed mammoths and this kind of thing. Is that what they were called? Mammoths, anyway. Anything that anybody was hunting could literally sort of turn on them if they were good enough size. And so what I'd like you to consider, and maybe even jot down while you're thinking about it, is what you eat and drink each day. And one of the things that happens when you're stressed is that with the adrenaline production, all of the things that we were mentioning in the previous slide but one happen. And each of those alters or affects your physiology in that you lose more water. So for example, you sweat more, your heart rate increases, your breathing rate increases. All of those things cause a water loss. You start to lose valuable minerals from the kidneys, and you literally go into a more dehydrated state when you're under stress. Now that sets up a response in the body of dehydration alert. And what I'd like you to do is just think back to those little cells for a moment, because each and every one of those little cells is about 70% water, 80% water in the brain. And so when they become dehydrated, they literally become more alarmed. And so I had a Liverpudlian tutor that trained me 20 odd years ago, and she used to say to us, that little cell is terrified, it's absolutely cacking its pants. And so if you can imagine, and I do hope they haven't got any Liverpudlians on, because they'll probably think, God, what a terrible accent. But she used to make us laugh, but in a way it's not funny, because, you know, when that dehydration starts to hit the central nervous system level, that is when people start to feel the anxiety that is existing at a cellular level. And so what I'd like you to think about is that if someone is anxious, if they are having panic attacks, then they are in a very dehydrated state. Now, of course, there are two things that we intake. You know, well, personally I don't, but some people do. Caffeine. Stephen Chaniska researched caffeine for 10 years and its physiological effects on the body. And he said at the end of all that research, because it affects every single body system, that caffeine is, when you intake it, it's like putting a state in the body of living in a war zone. So if you can imagine what it feels like to well, actually we're not exactly in a war zone, but we are in such a peculiar situation at the moment. And you can imagine, perhaps, that is what the body feels like when caffeine touches the adrenal glands. Sugar is also very dehydrating, makes the body excrete valuable minerals from the kidneys, as does stress, particularly magnesium. And that is going to be coming up in a few minutes. Then, of course, you've got all the external stresses that we have, you know, relationships, finance, housing, looking after children, in amongst doing work, etc., etc. All of those external stresses contribute to the stress load. So if we can reduce the internal stress that's in the body, then we can make a big difference to the way that we respond to the external stresses. So there is a little reminder. It's like a catch-22. If you're stressed, you'll become more dehydrated. If your body's dehydrated, you will feel more stressed. You will become more dehydrated. It's a really vicious circle. So, of course, one of the things is to stick back your 4 pints of water, of course. She says, having a swig. And of course, I'm going to look at, you know, another way or other ways in which you could bring water into the body. And of course, they say that for every hour of exercise, you could do with an extra pinter on top of that. And of course, when we're in the summer and we're sweating readily, because actually it's surprisingly warm today, even though it's cloudy, then of course we're losing more water, and we can feel that we're losing more water. So it's more like 5 to 6 pints that we need to put back in. So what I would love to suggest this evening is, let's focus on wellness and leave the fear virus behind. Because if I can get you to think about a goldfish in a bowl, each of your cells, when it's in a clean, hydrated environment, there is not going to be any fungal, bacterial, or viral activity, because those things manifest inside the body, and they manifest in a pH that is acidic. If your body is alkaline, it is much harder for them to exist in the first place. So we need alive, pure water, ideally. If we still got our water, our spring, water from springs, it's travelled through a vortex, and that has a very different energy. And unfortunately, there's not many of us can access a spring. I'm able to when I go away on holiday, but this particular place that I go to, but around here, all the springs have been closed off. Very sad. And of course, unfortunately, they chlorinate the water, goes through all sorts of horrible processes when it's recycled. Goodness knows how many times in London. It's too high in estrogen in London. We're quite lucky here to have water from a borehole. It's worth looking into your water, because another thing they're doing, of course, is fluoridating it in some areas, and that, again, is not a good thing. So one thing I like to really focus on is to suggest to people that they try and get slow water into their body, because when you drink water, it's fairly quickly absorbed. Some of it will be used, for digestion and flushing through the kidneys and supporting liver cleanse, but it will pass through fairly quickly. Whereas if you eat very water-rich, nutrient-dense, living whole foods, particularly vegetables are high in potassium, and the potassium holds water in your cells in such a way that it really hydrates them. So vegetables are your very, very best friend. And that fibre that they have inside is holding water, and right the way through your gut you will be able to slowly absorb that water. And so that's why I would suggest to people that if you include grains, nuts and seeds in your diet, they should all be soaked. So if you're going to have your oats for breakfast, they should be soaked in water from the night before, because then they will offer you water back rather than taking water from you. Your nuts, you know, if you have a bit of a squirrel box for a snack each day, if you soak them in water from the night before, drain them, rinse them, and then put them in fresh water, they will give you water back, and they will be much, much easier to digest. And what happens is when you soak something, let's say like brown rice or Brazil nuts, because there's the seed or the fruit of the plant, they start to produce enzymes that are going to help them sprout, but that will also help you digest them. So you get a very, very different message in the body, and you get something that is giving water to you rather than taking water from your digestion. And obviously we need sunshine and fresh air, because that vitamin D is absolutely crucial, even acts like a hormone in the body. Ideally, a purpose, love, hope and compassion is helpful for cellular health. And body movement, and that's something obviously that this group is really interested in. And from the perspective of replacing that water, there's some tips that we've just discussed, but I'd also like to sort of mention to you that your muscles are 60% water. And so the more hydrated your body is, the more hydrated your muscles are. And everything that I'm going to say now will go for tendons, connective tissue of any kind as well. And so with muscle recovery, one of the foods particularly that helps is sources of omega-3. So such as your oily fish, your tuna, your salmon, and so on. Your avocado has a bit, your chia seeds, your flax seeds, your walnuts, your pumpkin seeds have some. So any of those foods, the omega-3 helps you make prostaglandins that help muscle recovery. Muscle relaxation. Now, I was looking for a picture of an Epsom salt bath. I don't know if anybody does Epsom salt baths, but of course it's magnesium chloride, and it's a lovely source of magnesium that you can take up through the skin. And there's a lovely company called Better You that also do things like magnesium spray, magnesium oil spray. And that is fabulous to directly spray onto the muscles and massage in, or use their crystals to bathe in. Because it's magnesium that relaxes the muscles. It's calcium that tenses the muscles. It's magnesium that pushes calcium into the right place to relax the nervous system. So calcium relaxes the nervous system, but it tenses the muscles. And of course, when you're running, you've got that going on consistently, not only in your arm, your leg and arm muscles, but also in your heart. And your heart uses 18 times more magnesium than any other muscle in the body. So it's an absolutely crucial mineral. And this is why if you take exercise and then you take an Epsom salts bath, it will help your muscles recover, because it's replenishing that extra, that needed magnesium. And unfortunately, the difficult thing is that whilst most people have good sources of calcium coming, then unfortunately over the last 50 years or more, 50 to 70 probably now, the magnesium has become lower and lower in the soils, and there are fewer foods that have a good source of it, and so it's much harder to get hold of. And so, oh bother, I lost the slide. I don't know how I did that. Right, I was just going to mention food sources. So green leafy veggies, little bit of omega-3 as well, but absolutely amazing source of magnesium. Things like some of the pulses, butter beans and chickpeas have a bit of magnesium. Nuts and seeds, fabulous source of magnesium. Your millet, the grain, is actually a lovely source of magnesium. Also, things like seafood are a fabulous source of magnesium. So you often find that, sometimes you'll get, because of course seafood is a lovely source of zinc and a little bit of omega-3 as well. So you sometimes find things packed together that are really going to support the body. Just to mention that I run juice detoxes, eat for energy courses, and moon and your cycle courses for women, and that relates to the minerals as well. And I'm going to stop talking now and ask if anybody wants to ask any questions.
My God, that was so interesting.
It's a bit of a whistle stop talk, but thank you.
No, it was really good. Is there anybody that wants to ask a question? Come on, there must be somebody. Sally, would you like to unmute yourself?
Okay, I have, after marathon training, done magnesium baths in magnesium flakes, and there's two different types of magnesium, and I don't use the Epsom salt type. I use the magnesium chloride or whatever salt isn't. I have that one. But how long are you meant to actually soak in a bath? Because I literally lie there for hours and I think, oh, is this doing any good for me?
Yeah, well, at least 20 minutes ideally. And if you want to stay in for longer, then yeah, why not? It's very relaxing, isn't it?
It's absolutely lovely, and it really does help.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fantastic way of supporting that recovery.
I also rub magnesium oil on my legs because it helps with restless leg.
Yes, that's right. Yes. And so getting more food sources in is also a helpful way of handling that. Restless legs can also be related to sodium intake. So it can be good to look at, is there any processed salt coming in? Because that can contribute to it actually happening, as well as the magnesium countering it. And it's because sodium tenses the nervous system, and that's what contributes to the restlessness.
Okay.
That's really interesting. Sorry, I'm just making some notes. We don't have a bath.
And hydration helps.
Oh yeah. Let's say we don't have a bath in our house, and I so miss having an Epsom salt bath. I use the magnesium spray, but it always makes my legs really sting.
Yes.
Yeah, and I just can't. I don't know if the oil's any better. Is the oil any better, Sally? Or
no, the first time I used it, when my body wasn't used to it, because I don't actually have a lot of salt in my diet. She says eating crisps. It really does tingle when I put the bag, but then as everything balanced out, it wasn't that bad, but it does tingle when you first put it on. Mine comes from the Dead Sea salts, it's called, but who knows where it really comes from. But I did find it really good because I found that I was running quite a lot and my legs just wanted to keep on moving at night. And over lockdown, when I haven't, because of my foot being running, my legs have been fine. So Yeah.
What you find is that the better your internal magnesium status gets, the less stingy it becomes. But one thing I could suggest to you is to try the gel.
Okay.
Because better you also do a gel. And another way, as you've got the spray, don't waste it. Dilute it with a bit of base oil, maybe a bit of grapeseed oil, something like that. Put maybe a 10-piece size piece of that in your palm, spray that on, and just dilute it a little bit and then massage that in. Or you could use a bit of shea butter, something like that, natural shea butter, and massage the magnesium oil in top.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I just couldn't use it. I haven't tried to use it for a while now, but I know when I was doing a lot of my heavy training, I put it on before going to bed, and I just couldn't sleep because it drove me nuts. It stung that much. But that's really interesting. That says a lot about your internal state at that time. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, because I spray it on and it doesn't sting at all.
Okay. That's very interesting.
But I've been taking magnesium for 22 years and Epsom salts and goodness knows what. So, yeah.
I haven't tried it for a while. I'm going to go and spray magnesium spray all over my legs later and see what happens. Before I ask, is there anybody else that wants to ask a question? Did you find that useful? Very interesting, isn't it? Really interesting. I just wanted to ask you a little bit about the detox program that you do, and whether that would be beneficial for us as runners. Could you just tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. To be fair, it's quite hardcore. Okay. So the Eat for Energy is a gentler start. Eat for Energy looks at, we've looked at very much a little overview this evening. The Eat for Energy is a 6-week course that goes in depth to how your body works and what it needs physiologically. The juice detox is about alkalizing and remineralizing the body, and you work over a 6-week period with quite a restricted, I would say diet, but I'm going to say way of eating, because it will cut out foods that are very drying, that are very acidic, and at the end of the 6 weeks you go into a 9-day phase which is totally vegan, and 3 days vegan foods, 3 days the juice detox itself, which includes naturopathic techniques like castor oil packing, a bit of hydrotherapy, a bit of skin brushing, herbal enemas, that kind of thing. So it's pretty, as I say, pretty hardcore. And then 3 days exiting in order to, and it is a big cleanse. It's a big cleanse.
And how have you, obviously you've done all the detox, how often do you detox then?
Always every spring and every autumn, but around the spring equinox and the autumn equinox, and then sometimes at the summer solstice as well.
Okay.
So I just did an at-home detox with a group of 7 in May because we couldn't go away.
Right. And how would you do that alongside, so for people that train and are training for events, at what point would you suggest a detox, and how would that fit into a training plan?
Right. That's a really good question. There certainly wouldn't be a loss of energy. That the 9-day bit would need to involve more gentle exercise really than heavy exercise. Yeah. So one of the things that we do is some yoga alongside, because you want the energy that your body has to go towards cleansing the cells.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, it's interesting. Has anybody done detox on here? Nobody. Oh, you have, Debbie. Have you done it? And how did you get? Do you mind sharing? How did you get on with it?
Yes, Deb was on my detox.
How was she? How did you, do you mind unmuting yourself and speaking? Hang on, let's see if I can unmute you, because it fascinates me. It won't.
Sorry, Deb, I didn't see you there.
It won't let, there you are, you're unmuted. Yeah, how did you find the detox?
Very difficult, but worthwhile. Very worthwhile. Definitely. The rewards far outweigh the effort, shall we say? I'm not vegan. Do drink coffee. So I think the first day was the most difficult. But then I felt better day by day. It's unbelievable, really. I can't probably put into words how the benefits from it. But yeah. I see Suzy quite often as well. So I use reflexology. I go to Suzy for reflexology, and she obviously advises me on my diet and vitamins and minerals. So it's not. It was a one-off juice detox, but I do use Suzy frequently. So highly recommended. Highly recommended.
Cool. Thank you. It's just interesting to hear someone that's done it. Thanks, Deb. I'll just mute you. So that's the other thing about coffee. So for those of us that take coffee, so if there's something that you wanted to work towards cutting caffeine out, do you suggest cold turkey, or do you reduce it? What do you recommend?
I don't suggest cold turkey to anybody for anything, actually. You know, whether that's alcohol, coffee, whatever it is. But it's really better to put the good stuff in first, and then gradually take the other stuff out slowly. And sometimes, you know, with some of the changes people make, they even find that they're actually not bothered about having caffeine anymore or having alcohol anymore. Because if you can imagine, both of those things are creating opiate responses in the brain, you know, or temporary prostaglandin responses that are temporarily making you feel good, but they are not feeding the body, if that makes sense, or the brain. Yeah.
Because I mean, you feel tired, and what do you go for? You go for the caffeine. So have you? I assume you don't drink caffeine at all. How long have you not drunk caffeine for?
Well, about 22 years.
Quite a while then.
Yeah.
So like alcohol, I don't drink, and anything, just coffee. Oh man, it's so addictive, isn't it? Like, I have tried to give it up before, haven't I, Karen? It didn't go too well. So, but I think when you listen to that, though, it is something I'd like to definitely get. I've only had probably 2, maximum 3 a day, which is probably still, you know, a fair bit, I assume. Nothing after midday, because otherwise it does affect my sleep. But it would definitely be something I'd like to cut back on and cut out completely, I think.
It is amazing how different people feel when they do. And it's good to think about what it's doing as well inside, because it has particular effects, certainly for women gynecologically, and for everybody cardiovascularly, the nervous system. It's big. It's big. Yeah,
it is interesting. And obviously, like, I think with runners, I don't know if other people agree, we do tend to be people that will just keep pushing. I know I'm terrible for it, you know, and I always think, like, it's finding that kind of, because it's easy to recognize when you're really, really tired and that you should possibly pull back for a day and not train. But it's that if I didn't run every time I felt a bit tired, I probably would never run. And it's that fine line of what are the signs that I really need to pull back a little bit. What are those 10 telltale signs? Because I think my nutrition is very good. And the things that you've talked about, all of that, but I think stress levels, and not necessarily from being stressed with things, but just working a lot. You know, you get up, you go, and then I come back, I go out for a run, come back, shower, go coaching, and all of those, that's all happy stuff, and I love it. it still after a while starts to have a toll. And it's those telltale signs, isn't it, of, you know, when to pull back as runners. Me and Karen are very different, my partner. Like, she is just horizontal, laid back, chilled out. I am go, 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 go until I break. And I don't even know when I'm tired. Like, Karen will generally say, you need to pull back. You need to say, really, am I tired? So I am that kind of person that is probably, you know, is on the edge of burnout quite often. And I've really had to put in strategies and learn when to recognize when I need to pull back. And I think a lot of runners are that kind of type of personality, and it's, you know, it's recognizing it, isn't it? It's not just about nutrition, it's so many other things.
Yes, and I think that's why I tried to focus on at the beginning, is that there's so many sources of stress, and it's remembering the effect that has on your internal physiology, but then thinking, well, how can I create such a strong internal environment that if some stress hits me, I'm just going to stand against it. You know, my body is going to cope with it because it's got the resources. It's got And so if you think about your coffee, just to give you an example, for every instant coffee, you can lose up to twice the volume of water. For every filter coffee, are you a filter coffee fan, Rachel? You can lose up to 4 times the volume.
Oh my gosh.
So, you know, you think, right, okay, I'm swigging back my water. I'm doing great. I'm putting my 4 to 6 pints in a day, and I'm doing an extra pint for my hour of exercise. But then if you think, well, I'm losing 2 pints for each coffee that I have.
Yeah.
Then, yeah.
Go on, Sally.
I don't drink a lot of coffee. I drink 1 cup a day in the morning, and that's it. I don't really drink an awful lot. But on one training run, we were testing out gels because we were in marathon training, and you probably don't like gels at all, but there we go. And we tried, each of us were advised to try, if we wanted to, it wasn't prescriptive, a caffeine-based gel. And we tried, 2 of us tried a caffeine-based gel just to see what the effect was. This was only in a local training run. It was horrible because it made your heart beat quickly. It made you feel very spaced out because you were quite tired after a training run. We had it at the end of the training run, like you might emulate, say you're doing a distant run and have it to get you through the last 4 or 5 miles. Wow. And it was very, I don't know if others have used them, but it was an incredibly weird, spacey feeling in your head because your heart was going 19 to the dozen as this caffeine hit you on a nutritional low. And it was because what it was trying to give you was extra energy to make the last few miles. And it was absolutely hideous. I've never touched them ever in a race ever.
I did it once on an Ironman race, had a Red Bull, and I've never even tried it in my life, and I felt quite bad on the Ironman. I thought, brilliant, let's have a Red Bull. Oh man, and I would never touch the stuff again. My heart was racing. I felt like so weird. I thought that's the worst thing. What do they say on a race day? Never do anything different. Never do anything you've not done before.
Right, yes, I can imagine.
That's one of the golden rules. I learned that lesson the hard way. But and I guess that's something that a lot of runners do is take. I can't tolerate gels. They make my heart race, and I have really bad sugar crashes with gels. So I tend to take other stuff. I can't take the gels, but I think a lot of runners do rely on taking gels in races. But I don't know if that's something you have experience with, knowing the different types of things you could take as opposed to gel. It doesn't matter if you don't, Suzy. I just wondered if you did.
Well, the thing is, you know, as you've said, when you're getting towards the end of a race, you are becoming dehydrated, really, and your muscles are screaming really for, you know, the minerals that they need, and caffeine is going to make you excrete magnesium, and of course your heart needs the magnesium to relax. and your muscles need the magnesium to relax. And so if you also think about, crikey, I mean, these Red Bull, these Alco Pops, I mean, they are really dangerous, the alcohol and caffeine combined, because you're dehydrating and spiking the adrenals at the same time. But what happens is that when you take caffeine in, it triggers the adrenals to give you that burst of sugar. But what happens is that your sugar will go like this. Now, the fortunate thing about getting a sugar rush like that is if you're running, you're maybe going to burn it off. But at the same time, with the caffeine intake, you've not hydrated, you've dehydrated, and you're losing magnesium. So you've got the impact on the heart and the muscles. And it's just absolutely the worst thing you could do. Yeah,
interesting, isn't it?
Because if you're having coffee and you're not running and you've got a sugar spike like this, you're going to produce insulin to stack it away. And if your cells are becoming less responsive to insulin, you're going to produce more and more insulin, and eventually you'll stack away too much and your blood sugar will go too low. Because at any one point, there was, oh, hello, Mog, there should only be about a teaspoon circulating in the bloodstream at any one time. It's such a small amount.
It's so interesting, that link between dehydration and anxiety as well, when your stress levels go up, and you can feel sometimes, like I can feel that anxiety in my chest.
Yeah.
And it's super interesting.
Yeah.
When you're working with somebody, are you like, do you first work them with their internal state, right, and get that as strong and robust as you can so that they can cope with external stresses more? Or would you look at both? Would you look at working on external stresses and strategies to work with those as well as changing someone's internal state? Or would you focus on
unfortunately, I can't, I'm not a counsellor. I don't really have that kind of external state support to offer. So I look at somebody's present health and what symptoms are going on. I look at their past health to give me an idea of what they've come in with. And I look at their ancestry to see what, they've got in their background, what parents and grandparents have as chronic ailments, if any. And then I look at diet and fluids and what else they're doing with what they're eating and drinking. And then work from there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I look at my brother and he works shifts, and so he has so many Red Bulls, doesn't he? And he worries me sick, and he suffers with that anxiety as well. So when you look at what you were saying, the fatigue from working shifts, the taking Red Bulls, and then the anxiety that prevents him from sleeping, it's a vicious circle. But convincing him to stop taking Red Bull is, we've tried, haven't we, Karen?
Right. Yeah.
We've tried really hard. It worries me that
you've got a bit more ammunition now.
Yeah, I might send him this.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there anything anybody wants to ask? We've got hands going up. They're all going up. Right, let's first, and then we'll do children and board.
What about decaffeinated?
That's still, decaf has still got about 10% caffeine, so it's a lot less. I guess the only thing I would say to you is that probably the processes that they use to decaffeinate it are not so nice, but the chemicals that are involved and so on. But yes, apart from that, it's a lot, about 90% lower.
Okay.
We can't go out for coffee anymore. We're going to have to go for something else.
Just water.
Yeah.
And a second question, if you don't mind.
No,
if you started to introduce all of these things, because I really could do with more magnesium in my diet, because I do have a not a great digestive system, and I think that would benefit. If you started to introduce these things, kind of how long would it take for you to start to see the benefits? Is it a couple of weeks? Is it 2-3 months? As long as you were committed, obviously, to incorporating them.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, because in a way it partly depends on your starting point. But I generally find that, you know, within a month to 6 weeks, people are starting to feel very, very different. And it's that thing about the same as running, really. I think it's that consistency and persistence, isn't it? Because if you were to go out for a run for 3 nights and then you'd said to yourself, well, I don't feel any better and I'm not getting any faster, and so I'm just going to pack this in. It's a similar thing with nutrition. And it's one of those things as well. I saw something, was it earlier today or yesterday? And it's a book called, oh God, what's it called? Something Habits, Atomic Habits. And this guy talks about how it's almost like an iceberg, really, is the only way I can think of to describe it. And he didn't describe it like that. But all the while, there's this bit of the iceberg poking out of the water, and you're making changes here under, and there are things happening, but you can't see them. And then suddenly one day you wake up and you feel refreshed instead of feeling groggy. And you say to yourself, "Ooh, I feel different today." Do you see what I mean? It's one of those things where, and that entirely depends on the individual and their starting point, and you know, how committed they are.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rach. Sean, do you want to go next?
Hi, yes. One of the challenges I have when I do an awful lot of exercise, my burnout turns to low blood pressure, and I get dizziness and things like that. Is there any nutrition advice you could give in terms of helping resolve low blood pressure? Is food, is there anything, is it just fluid? Is there anything that you would advise on that?
Do you know, really, low blood pressure is not dissimilar than high blood pressure in the sense of what contributes to it. And what I'd like you to think about is that it's a body fluids issue, and that it goes hand in hand usually with blood sugar. And so when you're in a burnout state, what happens is that you are running on adrenaline, and it's the adrenaline because the caffeine kicks the adrenaline, for example, but if it can be the stress that's kicked the adrenaline. And when your adrenals are producing the cortisol and adrenaline, what they're doing is making the liver and the muscles release sugar. And then, of course, let's say you're sat at a desk and you're not using that sugar, your blood sugar will have risen. It needs to get stored away because it's too high because you're not moving. And so very often then, when our cells have become insulin unresponsive, it goes too low again. And this, when the blood sugar is low, that's when our blood pressure can go high or low.
Yeah. Okay.
So, and it entirely depends on the individual.
Yeah. So usually if I'm overtraining or I'm getting to a burnout state, do you think it's because I'm not having enough sugar, or is it just naturally the body and the way that it's dealing with the sugar levels that's causing the problem? Should I be doing anything prior to that might encourage or prevent it from happening, if you like?
In order to maintain good blood sugar levels, you need to be really well hydrated.
Yeah.
And you know, if your blood sugar's dipping and your blood pressure is dipping or raising, then all of those are a sign that you're dehydrated.
Right.
Now, whether that's due to stress or whether it's due to diuretics, because obviously there's not only caffeine, the things that dehydrate are things like caffeine, sugar, salt, alcohol. What else can I tell you? Things like Coke, hot chocolate, will all to a degree act as a diuretic.
Yeah.
And so any of those coming in, and so full hydration takes a lot of work, because it's not just thinking about your water, it's really thinking about what you're consuming it as a whole.
Yeah. That's good. Thank you. Yeah, really interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Dawn, are you ready?
I just wanted to ask you about fruit. So fruit has been my health, or what I've thought is my healthy snack for years, and I would have many pieces of fruit a day. But I actually find it's quite, the older I'm getting, it's quite, I'm getting a bit more intolerant of it. And I'm just wondering, are there better fruits? Am I eating too much fruit? And are there replacement snacks that I could have instead?
Yeah. How many pieces a day are we talking?
On average 5, sometimes 6 or 7. Yeah.
Right. Oh, 5 to 7. Yeah, that's quite a bit. I usually suggest people stop at sort of 2 to 3.
Yeah, that's what I'm on now, but I
miss it. And so the thing to do is something like soaked nuts. And so you bump, let's say, if you've got a handful of blueberries and a handful of mixed nuts, that you've got a little bit of fruit and a little bit of protein. And a slight protein snack, and of course the nuts are high in fat as well, good fats, I hasten to add, will keep your blood sugar steadier longer, so you're not going to crave as quickly. Whereas fruit is ultimately a sugar, so it will trigger that craving for something else much more quickly. The lovely thing about fruit is that, like vegetables, it's really high in water, it's really high in potassium, but it doesn't have any organic sodium with it to balance it like the vegetables do. So you could always snack on veggies, things like carrot sticks, celery, put some nut butter down the celery channel. You could dip veggie sticks into hummus. You could have some avocado crushed onto an oat cake. That kind of thing would be lovely.
No more than 3 pieces.
So ideally no more than 3 pieces, yeah. And things like your berries, your grapefruit, your oranges, but your berries and your grapefruit particularly are lower glycemic than things like your sort of bananas and fruit that's much grapes, fruit that's much sweeter.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Dawn. And I was just going to ask about, a lot of runners will use electrolyte tablets following hard runs, obviously in hot weather. What's your kind of take on that?
Yeah, I mean, they're not something I've ever looked at, Rachel, I've got to confess. So I don't know what else is in them. Have you got one there with ingredients, or?
I don't know.
No.
I don't have any, no.
What I tend to suggest is a really lovely source of electrolytes and fairly balanced, is something like coconut water.
Okay.
That can be really lovely for hydration, because there is a nice selection of electrolytes there.
Yeah.
Don't know if anybody's ever tried it.
It's an acquired taste, isn't it, I find? I use that on training runs, quite the coconut water. It's not my favourite, but I know a lot of people do use that.
Right. Oh, right. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. But that's what I would certainly recommend.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, anybody? Cool. I think that's it then, Suzy, because that is an hour. That's gone incredibly fast for an hour. Loads of interesting stuff there. Have recorded it. Is there, everybody's happy for me to share this? Because I know there were a few people that wanted to come tonight, Suzy, but they just couldn't make it. So are you happy for me to share this with other people, the recording from tonight?
Me?
Is
yes,
okay?
for sure. Yes, that's absolutely fine.
Everybody else okay? All right, good. Okay. If there's not anything else, then I've already put Suzy's details on the link anyway, but I'll put another post on with Suzy's details. So if there's anything you specifically want to ask her that you didn't want, I know not everybody wants to ask on screen, and I appreciate that. Then I'll pop her details on, and obviously if you're interested in anything, you're not that far away from us, are you? About half an hour, do you think?
I would think it's about half an hour, 40 minutes tops, I would think. It's 40 minutes to York, so...
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so not too far. So I'll pop those details on, and then you can obviously ask Suzy anything. I don't know if at any point, because I know we were debating whether to do this or whether to do muscle recovery and what kind of foods to have for muscle recovery. I don't know if at any point you'd be... I shouldn't ask you this in front of anybody. Come on and do a talk later on at some point about muscle recovery, because I know that that's something everybody's super interested in. So that will be really cool, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I've tried to cover it tonight.
Yeah, there was quite a lot in tonight.
Yeah, I don't know if I can particularly add a lot to that. But funnily enough, earlier on, I was thinking. I did think of something else, Rachel, that might be of interest to everybody, but I scribbled it down. In fact, I scribbled probably 3 or 4 ideas down, and now I can't remember what they are. I must take some more fish oil. But that was early this morning when I was writing my journal, so I'll whiz those over to you and see what you think.
Yeah, that's super cool, because I know it's such an important topic, you know, nutrition for us. You know, we're pushing our bodies pretty hard most weeks, and I think it's really important that we support that with good nutrition. So the help, you know, the things that you've told us today, you know, there's certainly things that I'll take away and implement my caffeine.
Yes, think about your muscles.
You know it, but sometimes when you just hear
67% water.
It's when you hear it in a particular way sometimes that it just really resonates, doesn't it? And you're like, okay.
I hope so. That's the plan.
I heard it. I heard it. Thank you so much for your time tonight, Suzy. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me. Lovely.
Thank you so much. And I'll see you all, guys. I'm obviously not here next week. I'm having a well-earned break. I am shattered.
That sounds like a good way
have a break.
to rehydrate too. Yeah, any holiday.
Yes, I am going to full hydration practice. All right, I'll see you all in a week's time. Thank you for coming along, and thank you, Suzy.
Thank you. Look after you.
You too. Bye, everybody.